Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories.
The annual HOA meeting notice landed in my inbox like a bomb waiting to go off. 9 years in this house, 3 of those spent on the HOA board. That was enough to learn exactly how far people could go when handed even a sliver of power. I left the board years ago, thinking I could just live my life in peace, but here we are again. New rules up for discussion. Just those words alone set me on edge. But the thing that really had me boiling, the president of the HOA is none other than Karen, yes, her real name, a woman who somehow manages to make everything miserable for everyone. Karen lives 2 doors down, and let me tell you, she has always found a way to stick her nose where it doesn't belong. The neighborhood watchdog, except instead of keeping people safe, she's making their lives unbearable, and this time I know without a shadow of a doubt that I'm her target. Why? Let's start with my cats. My 2 sweet 10-pound furballs, who yes, I take outside on leashes. I know it's not the norm, but they love exploring, and I follow every local pet law to the letter. But Karen them. She's told me, not asked me, to stop standing in front of her window while they sniff around because her precious dog loses its mind barking. As if I can control her dog's behavior. Then there's the claim about my cats destroying her plants. That one had me rolling my eyes so hard I nearly fell over. Sure, they nibble on one shrub, but destroyed? Come on, these are cats, not bulldozers. Now here's the kicker. Oops, scratch that word, Karen would probably propose banning it too. The new rules include a gem that seems tailor-made just for me. Pets cannot climb trees. I mean, what other pets are climbing trees around here? Are we expecting a sudden influx of monkeys? My cats climb trees maybe once in a blue moon and only under my supervision. They've never caused damage, never needed rescuing, and certainly never created an HOA-level crisis. But here we are. The meeting is a week away, and I can't decide if I should laugh or scream. Part of me thinks it's too ridiculous to even take seriously, but then I remember who we're dealing with. Karen thrives on ridiculous. She lives for it, and it's not just the tree thing. There are other proposed rules that are equally absurd. So absurd that I can't help but think they're specifically designed to make my life miserable. I've never received a single official complaint. Not one. Everything Karen's ever said to me has been in passing, usually while she's glaring at my cats or huffing about the shrub. And now this, it feels like a vendetta, plain and simple. Let me paint you a picture of Karen at the last HOA meeting I attended, back when I was still on the board. She showed up late, wearing that fake smile she uses when she's about to start a fight, and spent the entire time derailing the conversation with complaints that weren't even on the agenda. Why is the trash pickup time so early? It wakes my dog. Can't we do something about people parking slightly crooked in their driveways? It was like she had a checklist of petty grievances she needed to unload before she could sleep at night. Fast forward to now, and Karen's gone from a thorn in my side to full-on sabotage mode. The whole no pets in trees rule is so specific it might as well be called the no cats belonging to me rule. It's laughable, but it's also infuriating. And the fact that she's the president, that's the real nightmare. She's got power now, and she's using it to go after me in the most ridiculous ways possible. I can already picture the meeting. Karen will stand up there, smug as ever, presenting these rules as if they're for the good of the community. She'll probably have a PowerPoint. She strikes me as the type, and I'll be sitting there trying to keep my cats from becoming the HOA's public enemy #1. But you know what? I'm ready for this fight. I've got my arguments lined up. I've got photos of my cats being their adorable, harmless selves. I've got proof that they've never caused damage or violated any rules. And if Karen thinks she can use her position to single me out, she's in for a rude awakening. The thing that really gets me, though, is the sheer pettiness of it all. We're talking about a community of 6 connected townhouses. We share a yard. It's not like I'm letting my cats run wild on private property. They're leashed, supervised, and well-behaved. Karen's dog, on the other hand, is a yappy little terror that barks at everything that moves. But does anyone propose a rule about barking dogs? Of course not. That would actually make sense, and Karen would never let that happen. As the meeting day approaches, I can't help but feel a mix of dread and determination. Dread because I know how these things go. Karen will rally her little clique and they'll gang up on anyone who dares to disagree. Determination because I'm not going down without a fight. If Karen wants to make this personal, fine. 2 can play that game. The morning of the meeting, I leash up my cats and let them sniff around the yard for a bit. Karen's blinds twitch, and a moment later her dog starts barking like mad. I glance toward her window, and sure enough, there she is, glaring at me like I've just committed a felony. I give her a little wave, and she slams the blinds shut. By the time I walk into the meeting room, The tension is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Karen is already there, seated at the head of the table like she's queen of the neighborhood, and her little posse of supporters is clustered around her. I take a seat near the back trying to stay calm, but my blood is boiling. The meeting starts and it's the usual boring stuff, budget updates, maintenance schedules, blah blah blah. Then Karen clears her throat and announces, "Now onto the proposed new rules." Her voice is dripping with faux authority, and I can feel everyone's eyes on me as she starts listing them off. No pets allowed to climb trees. She says it like it's the most reasonable thing in the world, but her eyes flicker toward me for just a second too long. I lean back in my chair, arms crossed, waiting for her to finish. When she finally opens the floor for discussion, I raise my hand. "Can I ask what prompted this rule?" I say, trying to keep my tone even. Karen's smile is so fake it's painful to look at. "Oh, we've had some complaints about pets damaging trees," she says, not even bothering to name names. "This is just a preventative measure to protect the landscaping." Really? Because I haven't heard about any complaints. And I'm out there with my cats every day. If there's an issue, I'd like to know about it. Karen's smile falters for a moment, but she quickly recovers. "Well, I don't think we need to name names here. The rule is for everyone's benefit." I can feel my pulse pounding in my ears, but I force myself to stay calm. "Okay, but let's be real. What pets are climbing trees around here besides my cats? Are we expecting an invasion of raccoons or something?" A few people chuckle, but Karen doesn't. She glares at me, her lips pressed into a thin line. "This isn't about singling anyone out," she says. But the way she's looking at me says otherwise. The discussion goes on, and it's clear that Karen's got her supporters, but I'm not backing down. I point out how ridiculous and unnecessary the rule is, how there's no evidence of any actual damage, and how it feels like a personal attack. Karen counters with vague statements about community standards and protecting property values, but it's obvious she's grasping at straws. By the end of the meeting, the rule hasn't been voted on yet, but the tension is through the roof. I leave feeling drained but also weirdly satisfied. Karen might think she's won, but this isn't over. Not by a long shot. I walked out of that meeting, the cool night air doing little to calm the fire burning in my chest. Karen might have thought she'd won the day, but the battle was far from over. The smug tilt of her chin as she gathered her papers told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't done with me, and I sure as hell wasn't done with her. The very next morning I decided to play this game her way, only better. First, I started talking to my neighbors. Karen might have had a couple of vocal supporters at the meeting, but I knew plenty of others weren't exactly her biggest fans. I went door to door, starting with the townhouse next to mine, explaining the situation. Turns out, Karen's reign of terror extended far beyond her bizarre vendetta against my cats. One neighbor mentioned how she'd once left a typed note taped to their door, criticizing their choice of wreath as too large and disruptive to the aesthetic of the community. Another talked about the time Karen measured their grass with a ruler and reported them to the HOA for being half an inch too tall. "She's like a dictator with a clipboard," one of them said, rolling their eyes. I wasn't surprised, but I was angry. Angry that she'd been getting away with this for so long. Angry that nobody had pushed back. Well, that was about to change. By the end of the week, I'd spoken to nearly every homeowner in our little block of townhouses. Most of them were fed up with Karen's antics, but didn't know what to do about it. So I came up with a plan. At the next HOA meeting, which was thankfully only a week away, I came prepared. Karen, of course, strutted in like she owned the place, her clipboard tucked under one arm and that self-satisfied smirk plastered on her face. She glanced at me as if daring me to say something. Challenge accepted. The meeting started off with the usual nonsense, budget approvals, maintenance updates. But then we got to the new rules discussion. Karen wasted no time pushing her ridiculous agenda. "Pets climbing trees is a liability," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "We have to think about the safety of our community." "Safety?" I interrupted, feigning confusion. "Can you clarify how exactly a 10-pound cat supervised by its owner poses a safety risk? Are we worried about falling branches, or are we expecting the cats to start throwing pine cones at people?" A few people snickered, but Karen didn't even blink. "This isn't a joke," she snapped. "It's about setting standards." "Right," I said, leaning forward in my chair. "Standards like the ones you've been setting by measuring people's grass and criticizing their holiday decorations. Because if we're talking about maintaining community standards, I think we should also discuss the constant barking of your dog, which, by the way, violates the HOA's noise ordinances." Her face turned beet red, but I wasn't done. "I've also done some digging," I said, pulling out a stack of papers. "And it turns out you've been submitting rule changes and complaints at an unprecedented rate. In the past year alone, you've filed over 20 complaints, more than the rest of us combined. And funny enough, most of them target the same handful of people. Care to explain that? Karen sputtered, looking like a fish out of water. I'm just doing my duty as president, she finally said, her voice rising in pitch. Your duty, I shot back. Because it's starting to look more like a personal vendetta. The room was silent for a moment, the kind of silence that weighs heavy like a storm about to break. Then, one of the neighbors I'd spoken to earlier chimed in. She's right, they said. Karen's been harassing us for years. It's about time someone said something, another voice piped up. I got a warning about my trash cans being out on the wrong day, even though I was following the schedule. And she told me my patio furniture wasn't neutral enough. Suddenly, the floodgates opened. One by one, my neighbors started airing their grievances. Karen looked like she was about to explode. This is ridiculous, she shrieked, slamming her clipboard down on the table. I'm just trying to keep this neighborhood in order. No, you're trying to control everyone, I said, standing up. And we're done letting you. The meeting ended with Karen storming out, her face a mix of rage and humiliation. But the real victory came a week later when several homeowners, including myself, submitted a petition to hold a vote of no confidence in her leadership. The vote passed overwhelmingly. Karen was removed as HOA president, and for the first time in years, the neighborhood felt like it could finally breathe again. As for the no pets climbing trees rule, it never even made it to a vote, and my cats, they're still happily nibbling on shrubs and occasionally climbing trees, because sometimes you just have to remind people like Karen that they don't get to win. Karen is the reason HOAs are so despised. Who even thinks of banning pets from climbing trees? That rule was clearly aimed at you and your cats, and everyone knew it. Her constant complaints, ridiculous rules, and fake concern about property values were just excuses for her petty vendetta. It's pathetic that she got away with it for so long. Good on you for standing up to her, but the fact that the HOA allowed her to act like a dictator is outrageous. HOAs should prevent this kind of nonsense, not enable it. Karen deserved every bit of the backlash she got. HOAs are a joke, and Karen is the punchline. A no pets climbing trees rule. Really, that's not protecting anything. It's just a thinly veiled attack on you. Her constant complaints and the absurd amount of power she had are proof that HOAs attract the worst kind of people. What's most shocking is how long it took for anyone to stand up to her. Good for you for rallying the neighborhood, but the system itself is broken. Karen's behavior was embarrassing, and the HOA's failure to rein her in is just as bad. This whole situation is outrageous. The entire concept of HOAs is rotten, and this story is just another example of why. Karen is exactly the kind of person who thrives in these toxic little fiefdoms. She gets a title and suddenly thinks she's the queen of everything. The whole pets can't climb trees rule is so transparently targeted that I'm amazed she even tried to sell it with a straight face. Let's not forget how much time and energy she wasted drafting these absurd rules. Doesn't she have a job, a hobby, a life? And then there's the HOA itself. Why didn't anyone put checks on her power sooner? 20 complaints in a year. How is that even allowed? It's absurd that one person could wield so much authority with no oversight. The fact that you had to rally your neighbors and practically stage a coup to get her out is proof of how broken these systems are. HOAs were supposed to prevent neighborhood disputes, not create them. Instead, they give people like Karen a platform to abuse their power.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.